Hello, welcome to Travel Talks. My name is Kate Sanders, Director of Alumni Group Travel and Academic Enrichment at the OSU Alumni Association. Welcome to this start of this year's season, where we invite experts from across the university to join us online and learn about places we travel. All of our travel talks are recorded, just like this one, and they are saved online for on-demand viewing. Over the last few years, we have featured some amazing presentations on places like Yellowstone National Park, the Netherlands, Alaska's Inside Passage, Greece, and countries all along the Mediterranean Sea, and on topics such as geology of Iceland and D-Day. We share travel tips, and we did a session on photography too. This year, we're going to learn about India with tonight's presentation, and later we will feature some talks on medieval life and literature and cultural influences, the marine life of the Oregon coast, and there will be a few more. So stay tuned for all of those. You can find our schedule at ForOregonState.org/travel talks. Registration for all the talks is on that site, as well as in my monthly e-newsletter, the OSU Alumni Association's Beaver Lodge e-newsletter, and various social media sites. If you don't receive any of those electronic communications, but you would like to, send us an email at travel@osualum.com and we'll be sure to get you connected. For a quick update on 2025, before we begin our program, um, our trips are filling up, which is great to see. So if you're wanting to head out in about January through March, a lot of those tours are pretty full, but give me a call, let me know, and I'll see if I can get you on some of those. If you're looking to cruise, Blooming Mediterranean Tour in May has a few spots left. And that some of our cruises too in the summer, and then we're also booking into the fall 2025. Cruising does fill pretty fast. We share it with other schools. So if one of those cruises looks like something that you want to do, I would have a look on our website and check them out. Do the waterways of the Rhine or the Washoe Valley call your name? Are you looking to travel from Amsterdam through Germany and Austria and then ending in Budapest? Well, the Cruise the Heart of Europe Riverboat Tour is a great one, and this one's filling up pretty fast too. But it's definitely one to check out. And for our solo travelers out there, there's no added fees. So I know those are great trips for our solo travelers. They're hard to find, but this is one of them. So no added fees for solo travelers. In Ireland, have you been to Ireland? Have you been interested in Ireland? I will tell you, once you go to Ireland, it is hard to leave. There's just something about it. The landscape, the people, the music, the stories, it stays with you a long time after you fly home. So if you're looking to disappear in June for a little bit, do check out the Coastal Gems of Emerald Isle. And this land tour, it's not a cruise, it's a land tour. There is stops in Northern Ireland, which usually the land tours around Ireland only visit the lower parts of Ireland and doesn't quite get up to the north. So this one's special in that way. And then two of these next two trips are not until fall, but they're popular and they tend to fill fast. Um, Classic Safari, Kenya and Tanzania. I just went through the brochure with our tour company, and that's going to be hitting the mail very soon. You know, the big five, you're at the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro, the Maasai, you're going to go to Amboseli National Park. So it's your classic trip to Africa. So if that is of interest, it's coming up this summer. And to let you know, we do tend to do this trip about every other year. So it'll be 2025, and then maybe in 2026, we might do South Africa, and then we'll come back to classic Kenya and Tanzania back in 2027. And then I have to mention Egypt just because I have just gotten back from Egypt and it was in an amazing tour. The culture, learning about the hieroglyphs and seeing all the history, visiting Abu Simbel, going inside the Great Pyramid, seeing the mummified remains of King Tut. The trip was it was phenomenal. And it's a huge educational experience. So we tend to go to Egypt about every year right now, just because it is so popular. So if you're trying to decide what to do, I will say that if you only can do one in 2025, think about India and maybe do Egypt later, but keep it on your list. And I will tell you why. Essence of India. This is what we're going to hear about tonight. You're going to hear from Dr. Sunil Khanna. He's the OSU professor and Robert and Sarah Rothschild's endowed chair in global health. This tour we were supposed to originally offer in 2020. Um, and while the pandemic changed things a little bit, we had to put it on hold for a few years. And we're so excited to finally bring it back. Um, will we offer India? Not like this, but maybe not for a while. This is a very custom designed trip with Sunil. So we'll just have to see if we bring it back on the schedule. But right now, this might be a one-time opportunity to go to India with Sunil. Dr. Khanna received his doctoral degree in biological anthropology and human genetics from the University of Delhi in India, a doctoral degree in cultural anthropology from Syracuse University. He is internationally known and an expert in biocultural medical anthropology and anthropological demography. His research broadly involves examining the relationship between culture and health. And not only will you experience India in his home country with Sunil, but he was integral in helping us design this itinerary. It is a custom tour that he modeled and we modeled similar to one that he took with our OSU past president, Ed Ray. And on the trip, you're going to meet the people, you're going to learn about the culture. You're going to see wildlife, you're going to experience Diwali, which he'll tell you all about, not to mention the wonderful famous sites like Taj Mahal. And we're only offering this trip to OSU alumni and, of course, their friends and families. So Sunil, you've joined us on screen. Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Kate.
Yeah. Well,
And go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you have control.
Okay, so I'll start sharing my screen and let me know if you can see this.
Yeah.
Okay. So good evening, everyone, and thank you, Kate, for the introduction and
Yeah.
everyone for joining this brief presentation. I'm really
Well,
excited.
Sunil, we don't see your slides yet.
Oh, okay, just hold on a second. Oh, I didn't share the screen.
There you go. Now they're connecting. Well, your desktop, I think.
Okay,
There you go.
are you able to see that?
Yeah, we see the map.
Okay, thank you.
You're
So I'm
welcome.
really excited about this conversation and look forward to sharing with all of you what I know about India, especially the places that we will be visiting on this trip. Just as a point of introduction, I was born in India, born in New Delhi, this capital city of, at that time, about 18 million people, and now it's about 33 million people. And I spent much of my time during my childhood and my youth there in New Delhi, traveling all across India and kind of gaining a good understanding of the country's cultural and religious diversity and linguistic diversity. And I continue to do my research in India as well. So I have good connections with India and good local understanding and knowledge of the country. So, um, so what I did, I organized today's presentation just following what this Essence of India tour is going to be about and the places that we will be visiting. So I'll begin by sharing some interesting facts about India. They may be known to you, but just to get oriented about this huge, diverse country. And then I'll share some information about Delhi, Agra, Ranthambore, and then Jaipur. And these are the 4 places that we will be visiting on this tour. I'll finally end my presentation by discussing this very amazing Festival of Lights. It is a unique cultural event that people celebrate in India, and Indians living outside of India celebrate wherever they are. So it's a very important cultural event for Indians. And I am so happy that the dates of our trip will coincide with this celebration of this festival on October 20th, 2025, in India. So it'll be an amazing and unique cultural experience for all of us. Just to place India on this larger geographic map for you, India is located in the region which is generally known as South Asia. Often I've seen people talk about Southeast Asia, India. India is actually located firmly in the region called South Asia. It is bordered on the west with Pakistan, shares a border with Pakistan, Nepal to the north, Bangladesh to the east, and Sri Lanka to the south. So what's really interesting about India's location and its proximity to these 4 other nation states is that during the pre-colonial period, these countries, as we know them today, they did not exist. These were cultural zones where people moved back and forth, which now became nation states. So people in what is called as Nepal now traded and moved back and forth with India. Indians move into the region, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. So there is a lot of cultural congruity, cultural similarity, linguistic similarity in terms of languages spoken, cultural events, cultural practices, food ties this entire region together. So visiting India in some way could be an interesting way of understanding Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, almost like a proxy representation of these countries in one big experience called India. India on February 2023, and this is another interesting fact about India, it became world's most populous country, surpassing China. What is unique about India's 1.4 plus billion people is that the population of youth under 25 is more than 40% of India's total population share. So unlike many other countries that are experiencing a decline in their population or aging in their population, India's population is increasing, and it continues to be a very young country demographically speaking. So from a strategic point of view, from a policy point of view, a lot of demographers, a lot of researchers and policymakers are looking at India from a slightly different perspective. India is also a very diverse and multi-ethnic country. There are hundreds of languages and dialects spoken in India, and when you meet an Indian, I mean, it's sometimes it comes off as very impressive in terms of how many languages they can speak and how many dialects they can speak. And it's impressive to people who are otherwise kind of either know only one language or 2 languages. In India, our education system is built around educating us in multiple languages. These languages are not only offered as core classes, but also as elective courses in classes in Indian schools. We grew up speaking different dialects and languages. So essentially, it's very common to find someone from India who speaks 3 to 5 or maybe 6 languages and many, many dialects. It's essentially a part of growing up. It's almost like survival in India depends on how many languages and dialects you can speak. The Indian Constitution has designated Hindi and English as official languages, but the Constitution also recognizes 22 other regional languages for official communication, official correspondence, and medium of instruction in schools. So it's kind of an interesting combination of linguistic and cultural diversity that India presents. India takes pride in being a very religiously diverse country. There are many people, many follow many different religions, including Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Judaism. Secularism or religious pluralism has long been a core value of Indian society and Indian culture. Although, just like many other countries, we have gone through our ups and downs of religious sectarianism, religious isolationism, where one religion is prioritized over the other. But time and time again, Indian masses have come back to this very secular and very diverse sense of what does it mean to be living in India. Indian political system follows what is loosely called as the federal parliamentary democracy. India has designated 28 states and 8 union territories, which are directly under the control of the president and the parliament in India. The Indian Constitution is influenced by two very interesting thoughts on political governance, and it is strongly influenced by the British model of parliamentary democracy and also the US model of the separation of powers. So in addition to a parliament of elected leaders in India, the Indian system has 3 somewhat independent branches of government: the executive branch, that includes the president and the vice president; the legislative branch, which is the central and the state parliaments; and then the judiciary, which sits independently of these 2 branches. So in the photographs that you see here, there is this old round circular building. This was the parliament building that the British, the colonial government, created for India, and the Indian parliament and parliamentary officials used to kind of work from this building. But then more recently, an indigenous model was used to develop a new parliament building, and you can see this somewhat triangular building representing the 3 independent branches of government in this new parliament. We will be arriving in New Delhi, and this is a shot from the New Delhi International Airport where all of us will be arriving. And we will be there in New Delhi from October 12th to October 13th. New Delhi, just a little bit about New Delhi. It is the capital city of India. It is also the political capital of India. And you saw those parliamentary buildings that are located in New Delhi. And New Delhi is actually now a part of the larger national capital territory that includes New Delhi, Old Delhi, and several other, areas around this region, with a total population of, and I want you to, just hold on to this number, 33.8 million people. They live in the national capital territory region. And no surprise that it is the most densely populated region in India. This particular region has been the center for a succession of several empires, starting with the Mughal Empire and then the British Empire and several smaller kingdoms. So it has this deep history in New Delhi that we will get to see by visiting certain forts and certain buildings. And the architecture of New Delhi is so diverse It includes Mughal architecture, Persian architecture, and then colonial architecture, and very modern European New Age style buildings and transport infrastructure. And you can see there's an old Mughal fort on this photograph, and you see this European Indian version of Arc de Triomphe, and then this more kind of everyday commute system and the skyline that you see in the background. We will all get to see that in one city, all of this together. So after spending a couple of days in New Delhi, we will visit Agra, about 140 miles southeast of New Delhi. And this city, as many of you know, is best known for the Taj Mahal, which was built in the 17th century. Taj Mahal is a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a complex mausoleum and is often considered to be the world's best example of the Mughal architecture. Growing up, I have visited the Taj Mahal many times, and I have to tell you that no two-dimensional picture does justice to the beauty and the enormity of this building. It is a sight to behold when you're standing in front of this building. It is massive. It is huge, and it's very symmetrical. No matter which angle you look at it from, you will be able to cut the whole building into imaginary two halves, and they look very similar to each other. So it's an amazing building to see in person. The city of Agra is also known for what came to be known as the Red Fort, which was built in the 16th century, 100 years before the Taj Mahal was built. And it is a massive red sandstone structure, which again represents the marvel of the Mughal architecture in India. From Agra, our next stop will be Ranthambore National Park, and we will travel about 190 miles southwest of Agra. And Ranthambore is one of the biggest national parks in the country. It was established as early as in the 1950s, around 1955, by the Indian government as part of their effort to protect the Bengal tiger. At that time, this was the natural habitat of the Bengal tiger, but during the colonial period and even in the early post-colonial period, Bengal tigers were being hunted as trophies, so their population was declining. India gained its independence in 1947 and very quickly realized that it needed to protect its natural resources, especially the natural habitat of the Bengal tiger. So they designated as a tiger protection area, and this is what we will be visiting. In 1973, the Indian government took another step by declaring this entire region as the Project Tiger Reserve. And this is where the Indian government basically has left this entire area to its natural setting. And the tiger population, we are very happy to report that the tiger population has increased, and a lot of tourists kind of go into this area, although the Indian government regulates it very carefully, but the tourists can go into this area and see the tiger population there. In addition to the Bengal tiger, this park also hosts other wildlife like the macaques, the rhesus monkeys, and over 200 species of birds. So it'll be an amazing experience visiting this national park. We will also, when we are in Ranthambore, we will also visit a place called Dastakar, which is a rural income generating program that engages women in villages around this area to revive traditional craft and skills. And the Dastakar Center offers workshops in tailoring, cutting, using natural dyes, and glazing. This is considered as a success story of women's empowerment in the region through education and economic development. So economic independence leading to women's empowerment. So Dastkar is globally known as a success story for that. So we will also visit this particular organization and learn more about it. So from Ranthambore, we will travel to Jaipur, and it is the capital of the state of Rajasthan. Now we are kind of heading back toward Delhi. This particular city, Jaipur, was officially founded in 1727 and is known as Pink City for its trademark building color. Lots of buildings have this trademark color in Jaipur, and we will explore several palaces that represent the unique architectural style of this particular region, showcasing the lifestyle of the royal families of Rajasthan. I think we have also built in a kind of a trip to a royal family home or a royal palace as part of our visit to Jaipur. Um, Jaipur is also known for its local markets, a great place to shop. In fact, it is considered as one of the best places for shopping for locally produced handicrafts and clothes. And by shopping here, tourists are often able to support local artists and local craftsmen. So this would be a good place to kind of explore, wander the city of Jaipur and the narrow lanes of Jaipur and learn more about the city, its culture, and definitely see if you're interested in buying something here. And finally, this is the best part of, at least from my perspective, the best part of the trip is the last event that we will be participating in, which will be on October 20th. And we will participate in Diwali celebrations in Jaipur. And the whole of Jaipur, just like many parts of India, lights up during Diwali. And in addition to lighting earthen lamps, we will watch traditional dance and music performances. And personally, growing up in India, and I may be saying it correctly, that for every Indian, Diwali is a very important festival in India. It's almost hard for me to describe it. It's almost like a combination of Christmas and Thanksgiving all put together in one. And it embodies, spiritually speaking, it embodies the awakening of the human spirit or the inner light. And it is believed that participation in Diwali's activity brings peace and joy into our lives as it outshines the darkness of ignorance. So Diwali really means a lot to people. And when we are there and celebrating this, we will be able to feel and internalize that sense of excitement that people hold. So this is just my brief overview of our trip, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have behind. Thank you.
Wonderful. To get us going with some questions, if anybody has questions, please feel free to type it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or in the Q&A or the chat, either one, either Q&A or chat. And Sunil, if you want to, you can turn off your screen sharing if you wanted to. And then I have a question for you to get us started. When we were developing this itinerary to go to India, we had a lot of discussion about whether or not we wanted to fly from the city to the city, or if we wanted to do the driving from place to place. And you were definitely felt like we needed to drive. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what those drives you might experience?
Yeah, sure. So flying would really limit our exposure to the communities that are settled all along the highways, and we will go through many smaller cities and villages outside of these big cities of Delhi, Agra, and Jaipur. So we will be able to see what we call as the rural side of India, and this would be really an amazing experience, at least in my way of thinking. If we are
Yeah.
flying, then we kind of miss out on all of that
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. There's a lot of country that you'll be able to see as you drive from place to place. Definitely. Question about opportunities for being active, an example of hiking in the national parks. This I have to look back at ours to see if there's not necessarily like a 3 mile hike put into the schedule, but you'll be able to move, and I'll go back and refresh my memory on that piece of it. But it's not a hiking tour, I'll say. It is definitely a visiting and seeing and experiencing type of trip.
Yeah.
Um, any suggestions for independent extensions on this itinerary with India other than Bhutan? Oh, that I'm glad you mentioned Bhutan. A lot of folks did want to go to Bhutan, so we added in a pre-trip to Bhutan for those who do want to go to Bhutan. But on your own, Sunil, how if people wanted to add on something either before or after, is it pretty easy to do? And there's other areas that you would suggest?
I would definitely suggest if you want to add on something, there are several places in the south. So from Delhi, you could take a flight to Kerala, you could take a flight to Pondicherry. There are many places in the south. And the reason I am suggesting the south or the southwest part of India is because it's a culturally and linguistically a very different zone. So you will get exposed to something even more diverse side of India.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's great. Yeah, and then traveling on their own is not a not an issue.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's great. Okay. Um, oh, great. One of your former doctoral students is joining us tonight.
Yeah. Thank you,
Uh,
Deb.
yeah, thank you for joining us, Deborah. Um, and then and it just it gives you some context about the population. I had to do a little comparison of how did you say, would you say 14? How many billion people? 1.4 billion, was that right?
1.45 billion.
1.45 billion. The United States right now has 334.9 million
Yeah.
um, people in the United States, and the United States is about 199% larger than India. Yeah, so there's a little bit difference in that.
Yeah. So
Um,
it's
yeah,
a different sense of population density, um, especially in the city of Delhi, where you begin to see that there is crowd in every corner of the city. But
yeah.
it's also quite an example of the endurance of the human spirit and how people just find ways to work. Yeah, it's an amazing experience to be there.
Or if Sunil is fine. Oh, there we are.
Okay.
Either I paused or you paused. Oh, I think I paused for a minute. Sorry about that. Um, what about the people? Because I was just in Egypt and just thinking about how different people live. In India, do a lot of people live in apartments? Or are there more houses, or is it very different between, the city versus the rural living?
So if you're in urban areas, because urban areas are relatively small in terms of their, geography, you have a mix of high rises, apartment complexes, people live there. But then there are also, older areas of the urban parts of these cities where you have single family homes and, kind of on a small plot of land. But increasingly, India, especially urban areas, are heading in the direction of multi-story complexes and apartments. So
Yeah, that makes sense, especially with a large population. That makes
that's right.
sense.
Yeah. So we're
Yeah,
building up.
yeah, building up. And then what about the weather? Deborah's wondering about the October
So
weather.
So in October, the weather is going to be, I would say, warm to pleasant.
Mhm.
It will not be like hot as you see, as we feel in May, June, April, May, June, and July. The monsoon kind of hit. Monsoon is this very interesting weather pattern, very unique to, South Asia. It has kind of a different set of patterns. The monsoon hits this part of the country around middle of July to about
Mm-hmm.
middle of August, and then the monsoon evaporates and goes away, and then the weather kind of cools down a little bit. So by the time we get there, it'll be, I would say, warm to pleasant, very nice
Nice.
weather. In fact, with a very good weather at that.
Good time of year to go.
Yeah.
Yes. And then how long does the Diwali festival last? Is it one night or how long is it?
Several nights. And then again, because India is such a diverse country, different regions of India celebrate Diwali differently. So in the south, the Diwali festival can kind of last up to about 5 days. In the north, there is about at least 2 days of celebration. But now with more and more, people imagining Diwali in a more elaborate way, we have kind of 3 to 4 days of celebration of Diwali. Let's just say
Oh.
it is almost like for 3 or 4 days, it's never ending.
Mm.
People rarely, want to sleep because there's always some cultural event or community event is going on. I think.
Oh, it sounds like it'll be an amazing time to see it. Um, do you have, if for folks that are thinking about going, do you have any tips or thoughts or maybe things to read that they might want to look into as they're trying to decide if this is right for them?
Yes,
Yes.
Kate, there's a question for you. Are you going, Kate?
Oh, am I going? Sunil is going on the tour. We'll see.
Um, I would say there are lots of books on India that one can read. A lot of information is available online if you want to learn about India. But if you're really interested, I would say there's a book called The Discovery of India by India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. So I'll just put it in the chat here.
Oh, thank you.
Uh, so that would be a good way to learn about India, India's history, India's independence struggle, and India's transition from being colonized by the British to becoming an independent nation state, and then India's struggle to define itself as a secular democracy with 78 to 80% of the population following Hinduism, and yet the country decided to go in the direction of secularism.
That's
So
really
it's kind
interesting.
of an interesting take on India's history and tells us a lot about what's happening in India today.
Do do people of different religions in India, I mean, do they get along with each other? Are there what about marriages? Do you pretty much stay within your own religion and marriages, or is there cross?
It 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 depends. It really, really depends. I know in urban areas, often religion is less important in terms of marriages, in terms of unions,
Hmm.
family relations. Like I grew up in a family where my parents had more non-Hindu friends than Hindus. We had friends who followed Christianity, we had friends who followed Islam. The best part about that was that every time there was Eid or Christmas, we got to eat some very delicious food that they brought to our homes. So I think it again depends. I think in rural areas that religious divide is a little bit more prominent than in
Hmm.
urban areas. And we also have to take into account that India has been living as a religious secular country even before the British got there. So it's
Mm.
like during the colonial period and the pre-colonial period, and now in the post-colonial period more recently, India's kind of struggled to define itself and find its own identity again. But um,
Mm.
for the most part, secular secularism is a very deeply held core value.
Okay. We had a question of whether or not if there's any endangered languages or language that are not taught in schools that might be fear of disappearing.
There is one language that I know of, and I'm sure there are several other languages, but one I know is Sanskrit, which is
Mm,
which is endangered to the point that not many people are able to speak that language. Although it is taught in some schools, but not all schools, we equate Sanskrit with kind of almost like a dead language. But interestingly, my family insisted that all the kids learn Sanskrit. So I know Sanskrit. So it's like a very traditional way of communicating, but it is one language that is now considered endangered or almost dead language. Yeah.
Is Sanskrit only in a written language, or is it?
It's a spoken language
It
as
is a
well.
spoken language.
So very much part of the Hindu oral traditions. A lot of hymns, religious hymns, are actually in Sanskrit.
Wow. And tell me again, how many languages do you know?
Six. So which is
Six.
which is again not to impress anybody. This is just something that you embody as part of growing up in India. I noticed that one of the person who is attending is Vaishali Patil, and I'm sure she's like, yeah, I'm not impressed. I know more languages than.
It's really funny. Matilda was wondering if it's easy to travel through India by train.
Yes, it's very easy. India's train infrastructure has improved quite a bit. In fact, there are some very high quality air-conditioned trains. And I strongly recommend that if you're going to take a trip on your own, consider taking a train. The infrastructure is very well developed. And that would be, again, a unique experience. You'll get to interact with the people, local people traveling with you. So it'll be a good idea to do.
Yeah.
So
How about the Christianity in India? Um, there was someone, Judy typed in that she's had some experience of friends that have had some negative experiences with missions, missionaries, ministers down there. So, uh, yeah, I guess speak a little bit to about Christianity in England, or
yeah.
sorry, India.
So more recently, currently we have the majority political party is running on the principles of populism, which I'm sure all of you are aware of.
Mhm.
Um, and that populism in India has defined itself, unfortunately, in somewhat religious terms, at least from my perspective. But again, I grew up in a secular household, so I may be a little bit biased about that. And they have been really against this idea of religious conversion.
Mm,
So Christianity and missionary efforts were often targeted because of their missionary work and their religious conversion. Now, the flip side of that is that because India is a caste-based, socially hierarchical society, often communities that are at the bottom of this social hierarchy has very little incentive to stay in that structure. So they make a
yeah.
parallel move and convert to Christianity so they can have a more like a different kind of spiritual and a better social
Mm,
experience. So there are both of those things are going on where poverty is often driving people to think in terms of adopting Christianity, and Hinduism is dominating itself and basically being the dominating narrative, saying that that is against the ethos of nationalism in India. So it's a little bit complicated, but I would admit that yes, some Christian missionaries have been targeted because of their.
yeah. So you spoke a little bit about the caste system. Let's speak a little bit more about that. Is that still withheld like today?
Caste system is an interesting system of social organization. It's not very different from class system that we see in many Western societies. The main difference would be that in class system, you are able to move up and down the
Mm-hmm.
class hierarchies or class layers. But
Mm-hmm.
then some may argue, do you really move up or move down in the class hierarchy?
Yeah, good
The
point.
Indian, yeah, the Indian caste system is a little bit more rigid. A person is born into a caste, which is again an occupational category, and then that caste is ascribed at birth and it doesn't change for the
Mm,
rest of your life. And often, and I'm talking about very traditional way of describing the caste system, And often your education and occupational opportunities do get influenced by the caste
Mm.
in which you were born, just like people's opportunities are influenced by the class sometimes in which they are
Yeah.
born, or
Or their
expanding
privilege,
or
right?
privilege in that.
Yeah.
But again, having said that, the caste system has continuously evolved over time. And the modern version of caste system that we see in India today resembles nothing like what it was 200 or 300 years ago. So there is always this adjustment depending upon more recent trends in society that's happening. So I think, especially in urban parts of the country, caste has become almost to the point of very little relevance to that.
Mhm.
But yes, in rural parts of India, in villages in India, caste continues to be an important piece.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Um, while in the conversation, so for all of those that at the Alumni Association, I have a colleague who is from India too, and I was chatting with her about her last name, Chowdhury. And, or I didn't say that right. And I asked her if that was actually her given last name. And she has another last name too. And I'm trying to remember the whole story, but it's a common last name that some people just adopt. Is that right? And then, so can you talk a little bit about how, because I thought it was really interesting that how you would just maybe adopt a different last name.
Yeah. I just feel like we're having this interesting conversation, and the conversation in India would be even more interesting
Yeah.
related to these topics because we're going to be meeting people who will tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about all of these issues. So, so last name is sometimes a very good indicator of the caste of the individual.
Mm.
So people, when they migrate from one region to another, or they just simply for one reason or another, they decide to adopt a different caste name or last name. Sometimes it is an effort to move up in social hierarchy for
Got it.
women, and again, this tradition is changing. Traditionally, women adopt the last name of their husband's family. So
Hmm.
it's a patriarchal system. Women get married, and then the husband's family's last name is adopted by the bride. So
Right.
sometimes that also causes a change. But again, increasingly, as India is adapting to change, uh, that is no longer, as prevalent as it used to be. But
Right.
people do change their last name depending upon if there is some advantage to
It's really interesting.
that.
Um, yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, definitely if anybody else has any questions for Sunil, now is your time. You have that opportunity to ask these with him and talk anything about India that you might be wondering about. Um, And just a reminder that the trip is next year, so obviously next October. So we've got a little bit of time yet for this one, but and then that he will be on the trip with all the travelers, and then as of course it's the company that we're going with is Holbrook Travel. We've used them a few times, and they're great. I like to travel with Holbrook when we do these more custom, very educational, uniquely designed tours. They do a really good job at it. And um, then, and I think our questions may have slowed down a little bit. Is there any last thing that you might want to share with the group before? Oh wait, we have one more. So someone did want to talk about the air quality. If you
Yes.
wanted to, yeah.
Yes, definitely. This is a concerning issue, especially in the north in Delhi. What I have noticed is that the air quality, because of Delhi's location and all the local, regional, and industrial, patterns that we begin to see, the air quality begins to go down somewhere in late November, and then it stays pretty stagnant in December and January. So when we were looking at the dates, October is a very safe month to go. So the air quality is going to be relatively good in October, but definitely I would
Mm,
say in November and December, given what's happening in
yeah,
that region, it's going to be pretty bad. The Indian government, now having said that, the Delhi administration and many states in the north are kind of coming up with temporary measures to address air quality. I don't know specifically what those measures are, but I think this is an issue that
mm,
is at the forefront of administrators in the country.
yeah, that makes sense. Um, so would you suggest for going just having a mask
I would
when you're
definitely
there?
recommend having a backup plan as a mask.
Yeah. Yeah, the mask going there. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, when you have that many people living in a city, there's got to be something. Um, yeah, that was a very good question. Thank you, Raymond, for adding that one in to the chat. Uh, well, great. Well, then we um,
There
can
are
pretty.
there are two other questions in the QA.
Oh,
So,
we got those. Oh, wait, another one popped in. We got the other two. Oh, tipping. The tipping for the tour is what we do is we have the tour guide
yes,
is not included in the trip.
correct.
But then the other parts of the tour is it's all included.
It's all included.
Um, yeah, yep. So there we go. And to help close us out for the trip, I just want to let folks know that where to find us and ForOregonState.org/travel. It's the easiest way to find the travel website is just by typing it in. Um, Sometimes it gets a little buried in our site. And here on our tour calendar, we have all of our trips on the tour calendar. Since the pandemic, I'll say that the brochure mailings have gone down a little bit. So not as many brochures have been mailed out. Um, and so if you're looking for something, definitely the website is the best place to go for the tours. And you'll see the brochures linked on each one of the trips. Then, of course, we talked about that all of these talks are recorded like this one, and you can find them right on that site as well. And and then we are occasionally on Facebook. So that's something that I was not so great at this summer, but hopefully we'll get it back going. I have one of our students in my office. I'm giving that or a project is to help us get our Facebook page a little bit more engagement back into it. But that is another spot that you can find us as well. Um, and thank you very much, Sunil, for being here tonight and talking about India. It was wonderful. And yes, I agree. I think it would be even better to have these conversations in India. Um, yep, where everyone's brains will just be turning and asking so many. Sue says thank you as well. So,
Thank you.
all right. Good night, everyone, and stay tuned for more travel talks. We'll be back.